This is really going to get people talking. The MG Cyberster is a high-performance two-seat roadster that aims to engage with the brand's enthusiast past. Plus, it has some very cool party tricks baked in. How cool's that? The stats look good on paper. They look really good, actually. You get a 375 kilowatt dual motor powertrain. It can do 0 to 100 kilometers in 3.2 seconds. And all of that comes with a claimed 443 kilometer range. But of course, all of that comes at a price. Now, recently, MG is better known for cheap runaround city hatches and affordable family SUVs, but the Cyberster has a $115,000 price tag, and that makes it more than twice as expensive as the next model down in MG's range. So is it worth it? Well, I've got a day in the sunshine as part of the Cyberster's Australian launch, and I'm going to find out. MG sports car history is long. The whole brand started producing modified Morris cars roughly a century ago. The brand built a reputation in those early days through motorsport with a focus on power and handling improvements. But this isn't a history lesson. The big deal today is the MG Cyberster, the first true sports car to wear MG badges since the MG TF wrapped production in 2011. This one is a very different beast, however. It has supercar-style doors, dual electric motors, and all-wheel drive. It has a wraparound driver's display with 3 screens, a power-operated soft top, and 20-inch alloy wheels. For the electric era, the Cyberster comes with tech that hadn't even been conceived in the era of iconic cars like the MGB. Your $115,000 plus on-road costs outlay gets you a car with 375 kilowatts from 2 electric motors. There's a 77 kilowatt-hour ternary lithium battery and a claimed 443 kilometers of driving range. You get double wishbone front end and multi-link rear suspension, Brembo brakes, and huge 20-inch wheels with staggered 245 and 275mm Pirelli P0 tyres. There's absolutely no point making a drop-top sports car if you're not going to pull out all the stops when it comes to design. And I think MG has played the right hand when it comes to how the Cyberster looks. This is a car built around traditional proportions. It sits on a long wheelbase with very short overhangs. It emphasises how low it is, and a series of body lines run back to the rear haunches, suggesting a powerful rear-wheel drive roadster. These aren't the proportions of a modern EV. Everything about the way this car has been designed is there to invoke the classical past that it's designed to represent. It does get a little bit fussy in some of its detailing though, and it depends on how you look at things. There's a bonnet with a low centerline and deep strakes. It's got a power bulge in it, even though it doesn't really need to have one. You get angular headlights, and it's a little bit F-type and a little bit classic roadster. But then you run into maybe some fussy details, like down at this bumper. It's got a bit of a goofy grin, and it kind of looks more comical and not like the apex predator it's designed to be. Without a doubt, the thing that people are going to ask you about all the time are these doors. They're power operated, and you can open them from the remote or from a button on the door. They're a little bit slow, perhaps, in their operation, but they add some definite drama. The other thing that you get, of course, in a classic roadster is a fabric roof, and this one takes 15 seconds to raise or lower at speeds of up to 50 kilometers an hour. At the rear, there's some clumsy detailing too, like the corners of the car that are just strangely sharper than they need to be. And look, I have tried to like this detail, but I don't know how I feel about the arrow-shaped taillights. They're described as Union Jack lights, but in reality, they are literally just pointing left and right. But then when you take a few steps back, it all just kind of works. But I'd love to know what you think about the way the Cyberster looks. If you're a fan, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. But if there's anything that you would change, I'd love to hear from you, so drop us a comment down below. As cool as you think those power operating doors might be, once you hit the button, you're kind of left standing there for a while. But that's okay, because they're still really cool, right? This interior is really quite nice, and it is probably the best one that MG has put into a production car so far. It owes nothing to anything else in the range, and it probably deserves to stand on its own because it is a more expensive car and it is a completely different league when it comes to competitors. An MG3 can get along just fine looking and feeling like a Yaris on the inside, but this car cannot. When it comes to the laundry list of stuff that you get in this very compact cabin, it is long. You get powered seats for both driver and passenger. They are heated, there is lumbar support, and there is memory. You get a 10.25-inch driver display, but it's flanked by a pair of 7-inch displays. There's one on either side of that. And then there's a fourth display, and that's for climate and car control settings in the center console. The whole thing is driver focused. Your passenger can go and get stuffed. It's hard for them to adjust the climate control, and it's hard for them to see anything that you're looking at, which is probably a good thing because they're not going to be able to nag you about how fast you're going, I guess. The interior comes trimmed with padded surfaces and real stitching everywhere. There's Alcantara on the seats, and the seat bolsters are faux leather, but the steering wheel is Napa leather. So there's a ton of functions within. There's an 8-speaker Bose stereo, and I know it's probably not your first priority, but there's storage space in here. You get a little flap in the doors. You get a little phone holder right here. You get dual cup holders that you can push down or pop away. You get a sizable center console, and you even get storage for small bags or carry-on behind the seats. Something that MX-5 doesn't get. You get a glove box. Like, this car is compact, but it's not barren. It's not stripped out. It actually is a premium contender for everything that you get in here. Not that it'll probably be a key priority if you're looking at a car like this, but if you're interested in the boot, it measures in at 249 litres, and that is a little bit smaller than what you'd find in an MG3 hatch, and if you want an equivalent, it's about the same as what you would get in a Mazda 2 hatchback. Now, because this car hasn't been packaged for utility, the boot space itself is very shallow and reaches a long way under where the roof is stowed. It even comes with a warning here that tells you not to place anything heavy and not to sit on the boot lip in case you cause damage. And that's really it for storage space, because unlike a lot of electric cars, the Cyberster doesn't have any additional storage under the bonnet. Now, if an electric sports car like the Cyberster maybe isn't your thing and you want something a little bit more traditional, perhaps a BMW Z4 or a Porsche Cayman, maybe you're interested in a Nissan Z or a Ford Mustang, you can find all of those at Drive Marketplace. We have a selection of new, demo and used cars available for you to browse, and you can check those out at Drive.com.au/marketplace.
The dual-motor drivetrain in the Cyberster is set up as a rear-biased system to help maintain the sports car dynamics you'd expect. The rear motor is more powerful with 250 kilowatts and 475 newton meters, while up front there's a 150 kilowatt, 250 newton meter motor. In situations where you don't need full power, only the rear motor runs, helping stretch out driving range. The Cyberster's 77 kilowatt-hour battery delivers a claimed 443 kilometre range. Consumption is rated at 19.1 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometres, and even after plenty of hard starts and enthusiastic driving, we returned an as-tested 20.5 kilowatt-hours per 100 Ks. The lithium-ion battery pack chemistry means unless you're planning a long-haul trip, it's best to cap charging at 80 or 90%, leaving you plenty of range for the average commute. Away from home, the Cyberster can rapid charge at up to 144 kilowatts, and a 10 to 80% recharge should take about 40 minutes.
The Cyberster is your typical electric car. It is linear, it is quite quick, and it is, above all, silent. How does that gel with the sports car ethos? Well, in some ways it's kind of cool, and in other ways it does turn it a little bit on its head, because there's no noise and there's no drama. So if you're like me and you grew up with that being a pivotal part of the experience, you're probably going to miss it. It'll do all of your day-to-day stuff quietly and smoothly and effortlessly, which is great. But then you can punch it, and this thing absolutely rockets, which is a ton of fun.
But you need to be pretty careful about where you unleash that, because it's 3.2 seconds to 100 Ks and you are running up against Johnny Law in basically no time at all. In case you're wondering, you get a comfort mode, you get a sport mode, and you get a super sport mode. So you can kind of meter out how aggressive you would like that acceleration to be, to a point. If you firewall it, it's going to take off no matter what. One of the problems that MG's other high-powered car, the MG4 X-Power, has is that it often fights itself. The front and the rear axles don't seem to communicate terribly well, and in this car you get a little bit of that, but it is much better controlled. So if you punch it out of a corner, it will still understeer a little bit, and you will still feel maybe a bit of a disconnect between front and rear axles, but it won't wildly oversteer, and it isn't an uncontrollable beast. This is a car that still has maybe a little bit of mongrel dialed in, and you can't just point and shoot everywhere you want to go. You actually have to think about your corner entry and corner exit. So yeah, it's a sports car. But is it a wild, untamed sports car that demands absolute driver effort all the time? No, it's not that. It's somewhere in between. But you can also put it into, I guess it's almost kind of a snooze mode, and that is the comfort setting, which eases off the acceleration and makes this thing much more livable and, I guess, much more conventional in the way that you drive around town. I've seen a bit of criticism online about the steering and that it isn't the sharpest that you could possibly find. And in truth, it's not. An MX-5 is a much nicer steer, but an MX-5 is a much lighter car, and it's also a much less powerful car. So the fact that this has a slightly duller steering system isn't really a detriment to it overall. I think you kind of want it to have a slightly slower steering to kind of maintain a sense of balance and to keep everything reined in and under control. It's a fairly well-refined cabin when you're on the open road, but you do get a bit of noise, and I guess largely that's because you have a fabric top over the top of you and a fairly small cabin that bounces a lot of noise around. You get good comfort from the suspension, and again, you can notch that up through comfort, sport, and super sport modes. But one thing that I have found is that back axle really kicks over bumps, and it's not a super pleasant experience. Other than that though, I think this works as a package. I don't think it's the sharpest and most agile sports car that you can buy, but it is blisteringly quick. And I don't think that everyone is going to fall in love with the charm of this car, but the charm is there. It's just where you sit on the fun car to wild experience spectrum. This is a fun car. It's not a wild experience. Could it get there? Look, it probably could if MG were to do a little bit more work, but I don't think it needs to. It has its party trick, and that is blistering acceleration. And for plenty of people, that will be enough. Now, because of all that, and because this is an open-top sports car that is meant to be driven with the top down almost all of the time unless it's pouring with rain, of course, I'm going to do that. I'm going to spend the rest of my afternoon racking up the Ks, putting this thing in its natural element. Now, if you love seeing new vehicles first, the Drive team gets behind the wheel of pretty much everything that goes on sale in Australia. So if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button down below and make sure that you stay up to date with everything we do. Now, about this thing. Well, enthusiasts, brace yourself, because you're not going to love what I say next. This isn't the pinnacle of performance. This isn't the finest handling car you can buy. This probably isn't going to take the place of your Boxster, and that's okay. I think MG's done a really good job here of building a car that has broad appeal. It's got a lifestyle element to it. It's got a bit of a poser element to it. And at the end of the day, it is still impressively quick, and it handles very well. The stumbling block for this car is probably going to be its price. Up to this point, nobody has walked into an MG showroom with a cool 115 grand in their pocket to lay down on a new car. But I don't think that's going to be a problem. It can justify its price. It's a 375 kilowatt sports car, and in a lot of places you have to spend way more to get this level of performance or this level of technology. or this level of interior equipment. So MG is doing what MG has always done, and that's offering pretty sharp value. It's just that this time it's offering it in a package unlike anything they've offered in the last 30 years or so. And I have to say, for me, my curiosity is more than piqued by this car, and got a couple of hours left before I have to hand it back. So I'm going to hit the road and rack up a few more Ks. If you'd like to know more about this car, and let's face it, there's a ton more to unpack, you can find my full written review at Drive.com.au. So I'll see you there, and thanks for watching. Of course, the Cyberster isn't the only high-performance EV you can get. If you want something that's a little bit more undercover, check out the Tesla Model 3 Performance. We've driven it, and you can find that video right here. So jump in and check it out.